Know who I am. My name's Natasha Roberts. I'm assistant head at MV, and I oversee all of the careers programme that we run, which includes applying to university. So a vast majority of MV students have traditionally applied to university, and that continues, although I know that many of your young people might be considering degree apprenticeships as an alternative and applying for both, and that is our advice. So the degree apprenticeship route is incredibly popular but incredibly competitive, so it is still our advice at MV that students apply for the traditional route of gaining a degree as well as the apprenticeship route. Okay, so I'm going to go through these slides fairly quickly because there will be a copy of them made available for you. I know it is a warm evening, and I know we'd rather be doing something else than behind a computer screen. And if there's any questions that pop up as I'm going through them, feel free to put them in the chat. I'll keep the chat open so I can see what you're asking. And also we'll have some Q&A opportunity at the end. Okay, so applying for university, students start to think seriously about it at this time of year in year 12. And I'm sure you're aware that Friday, students were off timetable as they had been all week and started to draft some personal statements and start thinking very seriously about what courses they would like to apply for. So this evening's presentation is to go through the basics of how an application to university works, but then also the process that we use at MV. So first and foremost, it's really important to realise that when students are on roll at a sixth form college, they apply to university through the college. Degree apprenticeships are applied independently, but the way that UCAS works is the actual college sends off the application. So we are the ones that click send. Students do have to pay a small fee for applying. That fee varies each year. It's around £25, and they actually bring a card payment into MV for a final appointment when it actually gets sent off. But quite a lot has to happen before we get to that stage. So that's basically what we're going to go through. So all students complete a form as if you're completing a normal application form, like applying for a driving licence or a passport, online through the organisation called UCAS. And a large part of that form is the personal statement. And the personal statement is 4,000 characters or 47 lines, whichever is shortest, which has to be produced in draft form, be checked several times, supported through MV teachers, and that is all done through the UniFrog platform. And I'll talk through how that works, but basically that has started now. So students are basically doing two things at once. They are forming this document, completing an online application form, but at the same time, they're spending a significant amount of time crafting a personal statement. And this does take a long time. So the drafting process really starts now. And the deadline for all students except those applying for our early apps is towards the end of January. But you will see on one of my slides, I have an MV deadline of trying to get them sent off by Christmas and at least go through the process by Christmas so that we are well within meeting that national deadline. I've just on this first slide, and you'll be able to access this afterwards, there is actually a really good link on the UCAS website, which is advice for parents, which goes through the general process. Obviously, I'm giving you the MV way, but that is a really useful link. I've had another read of it today, and I think it is worth a read. So students should have by now 2 accounts. They've obviously got their UniFrog account, but they should also be setting up something called a UCAS Hub account. And if you've got older children, this is something that's new. So UCAS Hub has only been around a couple of years. And this is now sort of an online account through UCAS where they've kind of mirrored a bit what Unifrog does. They've created some search tools, they've created lots of useful videos and information. And then within that UCAS hub is the link to start the UCAS application form. So, and you can create for yourself a kind of pretend UCAS hub account, if you like, as a parent as well, which is quite interesting to do in the same way that you can do on Unifrog. It will start to ask you if you're going to apply to university, but it's worth doing, and it's nice to see it from a student point of view. Okay, so I just thought this was quite important to also realise what's going on at the minute. I have shown this slide before, which kind of shows the typical universities that students went to last year, so the cohort that are just finishing their first year. But my message on there is now is the time to be going out on open days, or at least booking onto open days. Some of them are virtual, the vast majority are in person. And even if you can't make that open day, so many UK universities allow the general public to just walk round. I'll be honest, I love nothing better than going to a university campus and having a good walk round. But if you can't make those days, I think it's really important to at least get to those cities that the young people are considering moving to, because going to university is not just about choosing a course. It is not just thinking about a future career, it's deciding where you would like to live, getting a feel of that environment and whether it would be the right sort of fit. So open days is a really important thing to be doing at the minute. So 3 things going on really. Busy on Unifrog, starting the UCAS hub research and maybe starting the UCAS form, and then obviously the research, which is open days as well. So I just thought this would be useful. I'm not going to read through it all, but I just thought this would be useful for you to see what Year 12 have been doing, really, the prep. And this, some of them, it starts right back from October. Some of them have maybe only just started their prep sort of about Easter. But there's a couple of things I just wanted to highlight there. So students that applied for an alumni mentor, they've been thinking very seriously about what sort of courses. They actually would have their alumni mentor that would help them draft their personal statement, be another person to proofread. We have had work experience, both in person and virtual last week. I'm also advising that if students went out on in person, that they also have a SpringPod account and complete a virtual work experience. Universities are loving reading about those. And interestingly enough, UCAS and SpringPod are now working together. That's a new thing this year. So UCAS really recognise that as an organisation, and their programmes are superb. And then this Wednesday, 145 MV students are coming to Nottingham University with us to one of the national fairs where the vast majority of universities and some apprenticeship providers are going to be. So that's on Wednesday. We leave MV about 10 o'clock, get back by 3 o'clock. And also we have got a really lovely event for young people a week on Friday, where about 56, 57 former students, some who just left last year and have had their first year at uni, going back to those that are nearer to their 30th birthday, who have gone through the MV process, maybe university or apprenticeships, and are really well into their careers. They're all going to be back for our alumni event, and that's going to be another great opportunity as part of their year 12 prep to network, gain advice, but really just hear from those that have been at the same sixth form college, and really just get some great advice from those rather than it always being from us teachers who went through it quite a few years ago. Okay, so I won't mention any of those other things. These slides will be available. So this is really where we are at. UCAS Hub accounts should be set up with a private email address. Very important that our students realise that once they have collected their A-level results, I know that sounds a bit scary, but a year in August, then their email account for MV will become obsolete. So any communication through Unifrog, UCAS that needs to continue, set it up now on a private one. They're busy drafting their personal statement on Unifrog. There is a special tool on there which gives lots of advice, lots of pointers, and that's a 3-box process that they're very familiar with from starting that on Friday. And if they didn't get started on Friday, then at least they were at the research stage and they can now start it in their own time. And then I put a question mark against number 3. Some students may feel that they want to actually start the UCAS application form, get a feel of it. Most students will start doing that in September, but I'm highly recommending that the early applicants, Oxbridge, dentist, medicine and vet med, start doing that as soon as possible. And they got that advice in their workshop on Friday. And then I've put here, what are summer holiday plans? Not to know where you're going on holiday, but what's nice about planning university applications now is to start thinking about where the gaps might be, like doing, for example, a virtual work experience, maybe having another in person, maybe reading that book that you want to read to show a little bit wider research into the course, that then you could have some useful statements within, or using sentences within your personal statement. It might be continuing listening to a podcast series. There's a whole range of advice that we give students, but the summer holidays is that finalising time to do that, so that the personal statement really does impress the university courses. And also keeping researching. They are eventually going to apply for a maximum of 5 universities, but need to be taking some real quality time deciding on who those 5 are going to be. So obviously that's going to be something to be doing over the summer and into September and October. Okay, so I'm just reminding, I'm not going to click on this link, but I'm just reminding you as parents that you can access a Unifrog account. I highly recommend you doing that. And so I know a lot of you love supporting and, you know, being there to give advice. So that's something that can be done on Unifrog. And I have just reminded you that when you go on that, you start to shortlist universities. It will show you where in the country. It always surprises me when I start having conversations with MV students where they don't know where some cities are, or even whether it's north or south of Melton, where they might be looking. But, you know, there's some amazing universities in the UK. But if they've set their heart on Lancaster, do they realise where Lancaster is? Do they actually understand the transport links? It's an absolutely amazing location, but just at least, you know, understand that it's a different sort of university than maybe going on one that has a direct train link straight up to Newcastle from Grantham. Another amazing university there. I'm not on any commission for any particular universities, but we are so fortunate in the UK that we have such good quality unis to choose from. So that's a really nice, it's one of my favourite features on Unifrog. But this is actually my favourite feature, and it's only small, but spend some time doing it. Students, when they start to put in the courses they're interested in, the first thing they have to do is put their grades, and it will show them what is aspirational. And we really do want students to be aspirational. So this student might have put in 3 Bs here, and they're interested in primary ed. So you can see there they've got Durham University, one of the top Russell Group universities there as an aspiration. But then they've got the University of, I need to just squint a little bit, the University of Sussex there as a solid, and then Brunel down there as a safe one. And it allows those filters, but just spend a bit of time really having a look at how easily you can research different universities. It's obviously not the only source. Then when you click on those that have gone that dark purpley colour, that takes you to more details. You can go straight to that prospectus, to those websites, and there's loads of other resources. So I'm a big fan of the Guardian League table as well when doing research. As well as UCAS Hub, obviously, for searching universities. Okay, so buzzword. I like to keep it relevant to our local area. So pork pie 25 is our buzzword. So as I said, Every MV student who applies to university has to link their application to MV. So when they go on to their UCAS Hub account, it will ask them for the buzzword. And that means that then we can start to support, we can proofread, and I and the other careers staff can monitor how far they're getting on. It also means it's not just the application stage. It also means that I can see now or see later when offers start coming through, when they've got interview dates, starting to give advice when it comes to the firm and insurance stage. And more importantly, I get to be able to see what happens on results day. And that's really important for Dr. Dartnell and I to be able to do. And we don't get to see any sooner than you do, but just as soon as UCAS is awake on results day, all of that information. So it's all linked through the buzzword. So that's really important. It has to change every year. And I will just say that if you are considering a gap year and applying the following year, you don't link it through the buzzword. You're an external student, okay? And that gives you that more independent approach to applying to university. But our recommendation, if you know what you want to do and you're planning on a gap year, is you apply to university this year, and then it allows you to apply for what will be a 2026 start date. And I will go through that with students, and I can answer anything about that in the chat or in the Q&A. So that would still go in this year under PortPie 25, and then it gives the opportunity on the UCAS form to say, will this be a 2025 or a 2026 start date? Okay, so this is where we're at when they come back in September. So we have got just over 3 weeks left of term, and students have got a bit of gain time while we welcome our new year 12 students on our Discover MV days. And they've also got plenty of their study time available to really be working as hard as they can on their research and their personal statements. Because once they're back in autumn, it is all systems go. We're going to share the UCAS timeline with students. We're going to give them some information in a couple of weeks' time on one of their PD sessions. But right at the beginning of September, they'll be given the timeline, which will take them through the whole of the year. And that's some of the information I'll give you this evening. A September job also is we allocate every student a personal referee, and it could be any member of the teaching staff. But what I try to do is match the students to the teacher who will have the expertise or see that student regularly to be able to write them a cracking reference for university. And I will have some students myself to write those for. Once they've been allocated their referee, and we'll do that by mid-September, that referee will actually be attached to their Unifrog account, and we'll start to give them feedback via Unifrog. Unifrog has an incredible feature where when they type, the teacher can add a little bubble, like a little speech bubble, and give them feedback, and it will ping overnight into their inbox to say you've had some feedback on your personal statement. So this forwards backwards editing is very successful at MV. Teachers really do take this part of their job very seriously, and will be helping them really craft a superb personal statement. Then what happens is they're obviously carrying on with those open days. They are maybe having additional careers meetings, but what we will do is we will then be prioritising in September also for us writing the references at early applicants. So UCAS, it's always about the same date, and for 2024 it is the 15th of October. They ask for anybody who wants to apply to Oxford or Cambridge, obviously you can only apply to one or the other, for medicine, vet med or dentistry, to have their application sent off by the 15th of October. And that is mainly because the application process involves far more stages afterwards. Especially at Oxbridge, they have a pooling system for the different colleges, which really does take a couple of months. Some of the students will also have online tests to do. and they run after that's been sent off, and this year they're saying they're going to run from the 21st to the 31st of October. Please be aware that they may fall in our half term. So if you are an early applicant, please make sure that you are going to be available to come into MV and sit those online tests. They have to be done. We're a test centre. They have to be done on the college premises. But those students really have started, they know who they are and they've started researching that. The remainder of the students and the majority of our cohort, we will have sent off your application by the 29th of January. So that's after Christmas. And then my soft MV deadline is to have everybody through the process, through the system, and have everything checked, all personal statements finalised by the time we go on Christmas holidays. So there may be a few being sent off in early January, but not too many. And that's quite tough for students because they've got a lot on their plate in that winter term. So the sooner the better is always our advice. Okay, so this is basically the MV process, which is pretty much the same as most sixth form colleges. So completing that personal statement and UCAS form. A referee is approving the final copy of the personal statement. Just in answer to that question, is that Zach asking that? We are not allowed to provide some best personal statements to give you a hard copy, but teachers will start to do that when they do the editing for you. So they will be able to say, look, this would be a better way of framing this sentence. But you have to be very careful with these sort of applications because there are very sophisticated plagiarism tools that UCAS use. And if you're found to have any copying and people use some set statements, some what we call shell statements, then you will get blacklisted for applying for that academic year. But yeah, we've got lots of help available in answer to that question in the chat. Okay, do feel free to keep asking questions and I'll answer them when they're appropriate. Okay, so the referee finally says, it might be 10th draft, it might be 15th draft, hopefully not too many more than that. Right, your personal statement is as good as it's going to get. And they then let me know that it's at the stage for its final proofread. Meanwhile, the referee has been writing a reference. And the way that works at MV is each subject teacher through Unifrog by the end of September, little earlier for the early apps, has been providing some really useful information for the final referee to craft their reference. And you'll see I put in brackets there, it will complement the personal statement. It's so important that the student is keeping in contact face-to-face and through Unifrog with their referee. So for example, if I was completing one for somebody who'd done a virtual work experience and maybe 2 in-person work experience, it might be that they don't want to write about them all in their personal statement. It might be that they're limited on a word count, but then I would be able to write something in the reference. So it could say, in addition to the work experience mentioned in their personal statement, they have also excelled at X, Y, and Z, and this has provided them help in confirming this is the correct course for them, or something along those lines. There's actually a lovely box in Unifrog which says, I'll answer that in a sec, Claire, regarding the Art Foundation, because it does have a different process. So there's actually a section in Unifrog as well, which has notes for referee, and students can send us notes. Please mention in my reference that I've just read this book. I haven't got, or the highlight from, I've said something about this podcast, but I haven't got enough words to say this. And the idea is that the university will read the reference as alongside the personal statement. But again, this is quite a forwards, backwards process. Then eventually the reference and the personal statement gets a final proofread, and then our admin process is that once they've been approved, the student will be emailed a UCAS appointment time slot. Now, ready for that UCAS appointment time slot, they need to have their UCAS form complete. And my first bit of advice is to make sure you've got your GCSE certificates, not just your grades, your actual certificates, because sometimes when that's been sent off, universities ask them to scan the evidence that that is what they got at their GCSE. So please bear that in mind. I will be saying that time and time and time again to students. But if you didn't go back to your feeder school, your secondary school, and actually get your certificates, now's the time to do that before we break up for the summer. And then they have their appointment, and their choices that they want to do for university have been filled in. They take their bank card along. We send it off. They pretty much get an email straight away from each of the universities that just acknowledges. And the great thing there is their UCAS hub account then is activated immediately to start tracking whether they're getting offers. And some universities send offers out, especially if you manage to get your application sent off in sort of October, November, they will start sending out some offers quite promptly. And that's a real boost for students as they're studying towards obviously their A levels to know where things are heading. Then the UCAS hub account, everybody has to have sent off by January I can't remember the date now for this year, it changes every year, 26th was it? The UCAS hub account will then start to say when they've got to apply, when they've got to firm it by, and it's usually about June time. So you get a long time to be able to decide which university you want to have as your firm choice. So that's the language. I'll come on to that in a minute. But ultimately, what you're doing is narrowing down these 5 that you applied for which will be your firm. Okay, so Claire, you've put, do you recommend, even if considering Art Foundation due to start in September 25, that a UCAS application for a degree is also completed? It's a backup plan. So there'll be some degrees. So actually, if I just say that's exactly what my own son did, he had Art Foundation applications running at the same time as university art courses, and did get offers for both and decided to go straight to university to a degree that didn't need an Art Foundation. So yes, you can run the two side by side. Art Foundation doesn't go through UCAS. So your 5 uni choices. So I hope that makes sense. I can always extend to Barnaby in college. Okay, so that's the process. So then, in fact, does anybody else want to ask any questions at that point? I will also just go into my settings and allow people to work out how to do that. Let's do 2 things at once. No, in answer to your question, Chris, do most universities have interviews before offers? If we're saying most don't. Physiotherapy will definitely interview. Obviously, medicine and vet med interview. Teaching degrees will interview. Architecture will interview. They tend to be quite vocational courses. Some universities, it's quite random. Some universities will interview to decide whether they want to give you a lower offer. So I've known Manchester University do that in the past. It really depends on the course, but and some of the sponsored degrees, so some of the finance, PwC, they definitely have interviews. But let's take, in my field, a fairly straightforward business management degree at a mixture of Russell University. So let's imagine a student applies to Birmingham, Newcastle, Leeds, Sheffield, and maybe Sheffield Hallam as well. You'd probably find none of those for business management would actually interview, but then you might suddenly get an interview for Birmingham, which is an incredibly competitive sandwich business management degree, and do very well at interview, especially if you hit some of the wider participation characteristics, like for example being first generation to go to university, parents not going to uni. Remember, that doesn't include older siblings. And you might suddenly find that the offer was AAB and yours has gone down to ABB or something like that. So universities can be a bit of a law unto themselves when it comes to interviews. As soon as interviews ping through, we support. And you'll see that that is here on this kind of spring term slide. So hopefully that answers your question. If you want Chris to put in the chat what particular course it is, I would be able to advise whether they most likely get an interview or not. Okay, so then we are past Christmas holidays and we are heading towards that final official deadline. I get very twitchy if I'm sending them off too close to that deadline. At MV, I do have a bit of a record of getting them all sent off on time. And then we're kind of running lots and lots of support all at the same time. And I've put down their apprenticeship gap year. And then there's something called UCAS Extra. And you're eligible for UCAS Extra if you've been rejected from every single offer that you have put through. That might not have happened by the end of February, but UCAS system where if you haven't received any offers, you can then have a 6th university to go for and apply for them. And if they don't give you an offer, you have to do it one at a time. Then you can then apply for another. And maybe 1, 2, 3 students get an offer through UCAS Extra a year at MV. It's very important to research what GCSE grades are required. So I did a couple of years ago have a student who had applied for some very competitive BSc psychology courses, and she ended up in UCAS Extra because she hadn't spotted that they all required a 6 in GCSE maths. And I'm going back a few years now. And then it was just that case. And they're the sorts of thing the students have got to check themselves. You know, we are not going to check every single offer. Yes, their referee will be helping them. But really, starting with the GCSE requirements is that absolute basics. So that, for example, might be a reason. And then she found some that would accept her 5 and got on. And yeah, I think it's still at probably in about a second year at uni now. Those students who are applying to degree apprenticeships alongside, this is the busy time now, and you're going to probably be applying for those. They all have different deadlines. They all have different processes. We again will support. There'll be assessment centres to give you some help. We've got lots of guidance through LEBC who are experienced. So we've got all their guidance on how to perform at assessment centres, and we'll be helping with interview practice for universities, and then the offers start coming through, and it's a really lovely time to work in a sixth form college. You know, get quite envious every year, wish you were going off again to university, but the offers start coming through, and most students have to decide who will be their firm choice university. So that is the university that they want to have as their first choice, that they're going to start to book some accommodation for. But UCAS allow them to have a backup plan, which is called an insurance choice. And it's insurance in the way that if something goes wrong, so an insurance is lower grades or lower points. And really, the way to decide who's going to be your firm and who's going to be your insurance is to go out another time to something called University Applicant Days. And that is the universities inviting you. We've given you an offer. Now come back to the day. And they're really, I'll be honest, a lot of them are a bit of a sales pitch, but they're trying to get you to firm them. But it's a really nice opportunity. I know some students have told me that they've met that have come back, alumni that have come back. They've met friends that have ended up being uni friends on those applicant days, because of course the way it works now is they set up group chats for applicants. You can get onto sort of into the halls of residence that you've all booked into and start chatting to each other. It's very different from the day you turned up with your suitcase and didn't know anyone and yeah, left there on the doorstep to unpack your bags, or was that just my mum and dad? Yeah, they're all kind of chatting chatting to each other online and really getting a feel of who's going to be there when they arrive. So those university applicant days, they're brilliant. They've only been around about 5 years, maybe sort of a year before COVID. So that's the spring term. And of course, exams are going on. They start coming very quickly. That's, well, spring term goes up to Easter. We're prepping for exams, and then exam season kicks in. But during exam season, it's the time to fill in student finance. That's all triggered by the student, even though parents have a section to fill out. It's where you're going to book your accommodation for university. I've put where possible there because some universities don't let you book until results day. There's lots and lots of more support going on for all the apprenticeships. And if I just go back, I think I had on that slide that I will do a parents information evening on student finance. I won't overwhelm you with all how that works, but I'm more than happy to answer some questions. But I'll do that in January, sort of get the application process out of the way, and then student finance comes along. They have a deadline of May to fill that in. That is a really important deadline, otherwise you might not get your money in time for the start of term. Yeah, and then it's the summer. I feel like I'm wishing the year away, but next year, mid-August, exam results, decide which university you're going to firm based on those results. You hope most students, the straightforward process is you get the results for that firm university and that's it. There you get a lovely UCAS message on results day, you're in. And then there's something called clearing. And there used to be something called adjustment as well, but it's all done in clearing now. That's new last year. If you did not get the results for even for your insurance place and you don't have a place, there is a big pool, a massive pool of university places out there up for grabs. If you got better results than you expected, that big pool of universities and places is up for grabs as well. You might decide that, you know, that one you firmed for ABB, you actually got A star, A star, A. I've got my ambitions hat on tonight. And you're going to go into clearing. It used to be called adjustment. So if you are been through this process with older siblings before, just be aware of that. And you basically on results day, you do a bit of research, you start contacting universities. I'm on hand on results day to help with that, as are many other staff. And yeah, you can in theory turn down that firm one and go for something better. I once had a student who didn't get a place for dentistry and went through UCAS Extra and had dental nursing. And then when her results was so impressive on results day, she actually thought, right, I'm just going to contact that university and say, look, will you take me for, I applied for you originally for dentistry, I'm down for dental nursing. And yeah, they took her. It was amazing. She did have to get straight in the car, drive to the university for an in-person interview. They obviously Teams has been around and we've had a pandemic since then, so things can be done online. So yeah, all sorts of exciting things can happen on results day. And then I thought I might as well put this on end of September. You go off to university if you're starting. We'll keep supporting students who might be having a gap year for that year. And I've made your Unifrog account active until you're 25. As long as you keep using the account, it will stay active. Okay, so that is me. I think that is plenty of speaking from me. I'm sorry if I've gone on a bit. But do ask any questions or put them in the chat. And I'm just going to make sure that your mics, you should be able to use your mics now. But if not, feel free to go and enjoy the rest of your evening. So while they're on a gap year, they can come back in. So this year, I've helped some students apply to university that never had any intention to apply. We will have references, we'll keep writing references. They can come back into MV. I'll do some leavers sessions, probably about 4:30 to 5:30, a couple of times in the winter term to give some advice. Maybe they want a teacher to keep helping with a personal statement. But yeah, if there's anything else you wanted to ask about, I'll just go back and see who. Yeah, so that was Dean Williams who asked that. Does that answer your question, Dean? Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.